Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of absolute precision. It's almost like engineering in a way.
Right. Yeah, it's very exact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that stark, jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the screen and says, well, there it is. That's the problem.
It's completely binary, like it's either broken or not broken. And we inherently crave that kind of visibility when something isn't working right.
We really do. But then you step into the world of creative professional work, specifically that terrifying transition from having this brilliant, flawless idea in your head to actually producing a physical, tangible object in the real world.
Oh, yeah. That transition is brutal.
It is.
Yeah.
Suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless. You're looking at a landscape of technical execution that is just incredibly murky.
So murky. You could see the whole house in your mind, right? Every room, the light streaming in through the exact right windows.
Yes, exactly. But when you actually step onto the construction site to build it, you realize you don't know, like, the tensile strength of the steel beams.
Right, or what specific gauge of nails you are supposed to be using for the framing.
Exactly. And that exact feeling, that paralyzing gap between creative vision and physical execution, well, that is what we are tackling today in this deep dive.
It's the invisible friction that honestly derails more projects than a lack of talent ever could. I mean, it's the realization that your grand, overarching vision relies entirely on 1,000 microscopic, hyper-specific technical standards.
Standards that you haven't memorized.
Exactly, that nobody's memorized.
And what's really wild is that we are diagnosing this friction today by looking at a remarkably brief piece of text. We aren't dissecting some massive theoretical textbook here.
Yeah, not all.
We are literally just looking at the introduction of a specific manual. But this introduction contains one of the most accurate, ruthless breakdowns of why creative professionals waste so much time.
It really does. It's incredibly sharp.
The book is called The Graphic Design Reference Plus Specification Book.
Which is, largely considered a foundational survival tool in the industry. It's a book that basically strips away all the theory and focuses purely on the mechanics of getting things made.
And before we get into the actual mechanics, because we are going to get deeply into the physics of printing and the logistics of manufacturing today, I want to make sure you, listening, can actually follow along with the source material.
Always a good idea.
So the Amazon book link is https://amzn.24bybob. You can buy the book by scanning the QR code of the book link provided in the description below.
Definitely go do that.
And while you're checking that out, please follow for more technical design breakdowns and career building content. We're going to be doing a lot more of these granular under-the-hood explorations.
Yeah, because there is so much to unpack here. What strikes me immediately about the introduction to this text is how plainly it states the core problem.
Right, it doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, it doesn't romanticize the design process at all. It outlines what we might call the designer's daily dilemma.
Which is what, exactly?
Well, it's the sheer volume of disparate technical data required to finalize a piece of printed material. The text specifically lists tools that professionals frequently have to refer to, like diagrams, swatches, templates, and conversion tables.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because, that sounds like a lot of stuff to juggle.
It is a massive amount of stuff. And then the text drops this incredibly pragmatic observation. It says, however, few designers have all the resources they need at their fingertips.
Which makes sense. I like to compare this to being a master chef. You know how to cook a Michelin star meal, you have the vision, but imagine you have to stop and drive to the grocery store every single time you need a pinch of salt.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
Or like every time you need a specific measuring cup, you have to leave the kitchen. It would completely shatter your creative flow.
That is a perfect analogy, and this raises an important question, right? Why is preparing printed materials so unforgiving?
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Because in 2026, we have pre-flight software. We have AI design assistants. We have software that practically screams at you if your margins are wrong.
Sure, the software is very advanced now.
So why do I still need a physical book of templates and conversion tables if the software is allegedly doing all the math for me?
Because software only governs the digital simulation of the design. It doesn't govern the physical laws of the universe.
Wait, really? But it shows me exactly what it's going to look like.
It shows you a projection. But it certainly doesn't govern the industrial machinery required to actually manufacture physical objects.
Ah, I see what you mean.
When you are designing for the screen, you are dealing with light. Pixels emitting red, green, and blue. There's a fluidity to it.
Right. If you don't like a hex code, you just change it. No harm done.
Exactly. But the moment you decide to print something, you cross a fundamental threshold. You are moving from the manipulation of light to the manipulation of physical matter.
Okay, so let's look at the actual reality of one of those tools the text mentioned, like the color swatch.
Perfect example. Think about the physical mechanics of offset printing. You aren't just sending a digital signal to a screen anymore.
Right, you're making actual physical objects.
You're creating physical metal plates that will roll thousands of pounds of pressure onto sheets of paper. They're applying wet layers of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black ink.
Oh wow, so it's a deeply mechanical process.
Highly mechanical. So if you are relying solely on what your computer monitor shows you, you're already flying blind.
Because the monitor is glowing, right? It's backlit.
Yes, monitors are backlit, but paper is reflective. If you don't have a standardized physical color swatch, like a mathematically verified reference of exactly how that specific ink mixture will look on that specific type of coated or uncoated paper, your software cannot save you.
So it's basically the cake baking analogy again. But digital design, if you don't like the cake, you hit undo and you instantly have your raw flour and eggs back.
Exactly. But in physical printing, once that ink hits the paper, the cake is baked.
You cannot unmix the cyan and magenta.
You really can't. If it's a muddy purple instead of a crisp navy blue, it's over. You have to start from scratch.
And the financial stakes there have to be enormous, right?
Oh, they are staggering. A digital mistake costs you, what, maybe 30 seconds to fix and re-upload?
Right, a quick refresh.
But a print mistake. Say you've ordered 50,000 corporate brochures. If your template was off by just 2 millimeters because you guessed the bleed margin instead of consulting a verified specification.
Oh no, I can see where this is going.
Yeah, the automated guillotine cutters at the bindery are going to slice the edge off your company logo on every single one of those 50,000 brochures.
That is a total loss.
Complete loss. That's tens of thousands of dollars, a missed product launch deadline, and potentially the end of a major client relationship.
Which perfectly explains why the text emphasizes having these resources right at their fingertips. Because when the stakes are that high, you can't guess.
You absolutely cannot guess. You have to verify everything.
But every time you stop to verify, you pay a massive cognitive tax.
Right, it's the shattering of the flow state.
Exactly. In cognitive psychology, they talk a lot about the difference between a generative state and an administrative state.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it.
Yeah, like when you are actually designing balancing typography, conceptualizing the layout, feeling the visual rhythm of the page, your brain is fully immersed in a highly complex generative process.
You're in the zone.
You're in the zone.
Yeah.
But the moment you realize you don't know the exact decimal equivalent of 5/16ths of an inch for your grid setup, what happens?
Well, you have to hard stop. You pull yourself entirely out of that deep creative immersion just to perform a rudimentary data retrieval task.
Exactly. You minimize Illustrator. You open a browser. You try to remember the exact phrasing for your search query. You click a link.
You skim through a bunch of useless text.
Right. You find the table. You copy the number. You tab back over to your software. And by the time you paste that number in, that visual rhythm you were holding in your head is completely gone.
It's vanished.
It's like being a concert pianist in the middle of a complex sonata, and suddenly you have to stop playing, pull out a wrench, and tighten a lug nut on the piano bench before you can play the next chord.
That is such a vivid image. And you're right, you can't just pick up the emotion of the song right where you left off.
You just can't.
Right.
And the text is exposing that this isn't just an occasional hiccup either.
No, not at all. For a designer preparing physical materials, this need for technical verification If you don't have a centralized, instantaneous reference, you literally spend half your career in that jarring transition between being a creator and being an administrative researcher.
And what I find so compelling about this introduction is that it spares absolutely no one in the industry. It really doesn't matter where you work. If you don't have this solved, you are bleeding time.
It's a universal problem.
It is. The text explicitly breaks the industry down into two distinct workspaces to prove this exact point. It creates this fascinating tale of two environments.
Right. The independent or small studio freelancer, and then the massive high-end agency.
So it's diagnosing a universal friction, just manifesting in two completely different ways. Let's dissect the freelancer first.
Let's do it.
The text says, those who work independently or in small studio environments often find themselves wasting time searching the web or seeking out other sources for the information they need.
Which is such a common experience.
Now, on its face, That sounds incredibly normal to anyone who's ever worked from home. If you don't know something, you just Google it. What is the actual harm there?
Well, the harm lies in the lack of curation and the assumption of authority.
What do you mean by that?
When you search the open web for a highly specific technical standard, say the exact spine width calculation for a 200-page perfect bound book printed on 80-pound text stock, you are not going to get a single definitive answer.
You're going to get a million results.
Exactly. You are going to step into a wilderness of SEO-optimized blogs, conflicting forum posts from 2014, and paper company websites that use proprietary formulas.
Oh, I hate when that happens. So you aren't just retrieving data, you are being forced to triangulate the truth.
Precisely. You have shifted from being a designer to being a forensic auditor.
Forensic auditor, yes.
You find 3 different formulas for spine width calculation. Now you have to spend 20 minutes reading the context of each one just to figure out which one applies to your specific printing press.
And remember, you are doing all of this while a deadline is actively ticking down.
Exactly. The open web is vast, sure, but it is not inherently reliable for industrial manufacturing standards.
Not at all.
The text deliberately uses the phrase wasting time searching because the act of searching itself is an uncompensated high-risk activity for a freelancer.
I completely see the danger there. You're alone, you have no senior art director to verify your findings, so you just have to hope the forum post you trusted was written by someone who actually knows what they're doing.
It's a huge gamble.
But here is the pivot in the text that genuinely surprised me. Because it moves from that solo freelancer straight into the belly of the beast, the large-scale agency.
Yes, the other end of the spectrum.
It says, others in large studio or agency environments may have access to a vast library of resources, but find themselves spending just as much time looking through volumes of materials before they find the information they need.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's the paradox of information overload in a physical space.
Right. But again, I really have to push back here. Because these massive agencies, they have millions of dollars in billings.
They do.
They have entire teams dedicated to operations. They have walls and walls of the most beautiful, expensive reference books ever printed. How is it possible that a designer sitting in a multi-million-dollar Manhattan studio is experiencing the exact same technical bottleneck as a kid working out of their bedroom?
It sounds crazy, I know. But it's because an abundance of information does not equal accessibility of data.
Okay, walk me through that.
Let's visualize that agency environment. You're right, they usually have a stunning physical library. Massive volumes on the history of Bauhaus typography, encyclopedias of global paper manufacturing, deep dive monographs on color theory.
Right, those gorgeous coffee table books.
Exactly. It looks incredible to clients during a pitch. It projects total mastery of the domain.
It's architectural intimidation.
That's a great phrase for it. But now, put yourself in the shoes of a junior designer sitting at their desk in that agency. They are building a complex die-cut folder for a corporate client.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And they hit a wall. They need to know the minimum acceptable distance between a score line and a cut line on a 130-pound cover stock so the paper doesn't crack when it gets folded.
Wow, okay. That is a highly specific, non-negotiable physical constraint.
Yes. So what do? The answer isn't on their screen. They know the agency has this vast library, so they leave their desk, they walk across the floor, they stand in front of this massive wall of books.
And then the panic sets in.
Right, because which book has that specific industrial constraint? Is it the packaging design book? Is it the paper manufacturing book? The general print production book?
They have no idea.
So they pull down 3 heavy volumes. They drag them over to a table. They start flipping through indexes. They are skimming paragraphs of dense text about paper fibers, just looking for a single decimal number.
Oh man, the friction there is almost physical.
It is entirely physical. The text is incredibly precise with its wording here. It says they spend time looking through volumes of materials. The volume itself, the sheer density of the books, is the obstacle.
Because the information is buried.
Exactly. A textbook on paper history is designed to be read. It is not designed to be queried for instantaneous data retrieval. So the agency designer spends 20 minutes walking, pulling, searching, and skimming to find one number.
Which is the exact same 20 minutes the freelancer spent Googling and triangulating those forum posts.
Precisely. The environment changed, the perceived prestige changed, but the fundamental bottleneck, the lack of an immediate, centralized, bottom-line answer, remained identical.
That is wild.
The text is stripping away the illusion that prestige or resources automatically equate to efficiency. If the specific data point you need isn't within arm's reach and formatted for instant comprehension, you are wasting time, regardless of whether your paycheck comes from yourself or a global conglomerate.
That is such a vital realization for a professional. It completely shifts the burden. You can't rely on your environment to save you. You have to engineer your own immediate access to the truth.
You really do.
And this transitions us beautifully into the next phase of the text, because the introduction doesn't just diagnose the disease, it actually starts writing the prescription.
It pivots to the solution.
It introduces the book itself, the Graphic Design Reference Plus Specification book, as the antidote to this exact friction. It describes it as a compilation of essential information, providing what designers need on a daily basis.
And the examples it provides of this daily basis information are where we really see the philosophy of the book shine.
They are. But here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to be honest, when I first read the specific examples the text highlights, I was pretty underwhelmed.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, I expected them to talk about, golden ratios or complex color matrices or high-level visual theory.
The glamorous stuff.
Yeah. Instead, the text lists these 4 tasks.
Yep.
Consulting a library of type samples, identifying a specific font, checking the style and dimensions of a specific type of envelope, and understanding when to abbreviate a state or country name.
You thought it sounded like administrative trivia.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like the onboarding manual for a post office, not a guide for high-end creative work. Why focus on envelopes and state abbreviations?
What's fascinating here is that the text is trying to aggressively break the illusion that design is purely fine art. Graphic design is applied art.
Applied art, meaning it has to function in the real world.
Exactly. It is communication bound by logistics. And what's really amazing is how these seemingly mundane details are actually the load-bearing pillars of a successful project. Let's unpack them sequentially, starting with typography.
Okay, let's do it.
The text emphasizes consulting a library of type samples and identifying a specific font.
Which, again, feels basic, right? I mean, doesn't every designer just know their fonts? You pick a sans serif, you make it bold, you move on.
To a layman, yes, that's what it looks like. But typography is the structural DNA of graphic communication. It carries an immense psychological weight. Every typeface has a historical context, an emotional tone, and a specific legibility threshold.
Okay, give me an example of the legibility threshold.
Sure. Let's say you are tasked with designing a warning label for a piece of industrial heavy machinery. You don't just pick a bold sans serif because it looks cool.
Right, because people's safety's on the line.
Exactly. You need a typeface that has been rigorously tested for instant legibility from a distance of 10 feet under poor lighting conditions.
Oh, wow, I didn't even think about the lighting.
You need characters where the capital I and the lowercase l are distinctly different, so there is zero ambiguity in a crisis.
So you aren't just choosing a style, you are choosing a functional mechanism.
Exactly. And beyond function, there is the sheer overwhelming volume of choice. There are hundreds of thousands of fonts in existence.
Too many, honestly.
Way too many. So if a client comes to you and says, our legacy logo uses a font from a 1970s magazine advertisement, and we need you to match it exactly for our new packaging line.
You cannot simply guess.
You absolutely cannot. If you guess, and you use a font that is even 5% wider than the original, it's going to throw off the kerning and layout of the entire packaging line.
And the client is going to notice.
The client will immediately sense that it looks wrong, even if they can't articulate exactly why it's wrong.
So having a curated library of type samples at your fingertips isn't just about looking at pretty letters, it's about having a diagnostic tool.
That's a perfect way to put it.
You can quickly cross-reference the anatomical quirks of the letter G or the exact angle of a serif to identify the precise font family you were dealing with.
And crucially, you bypass the digital wilderness we discussed earlier. You don't spend 3 hours uploading low-resolution JPEGs to online font matching algorithms that just spit back 60 incorrect options.
Oh, those algorithms are the worst.
They are so frustrating. Instead, you consult the physical reference, you identify the structural category, you pinpoint the font, and you get back to actually designing the packaging.
Okay, the font argument makes perfect sense now. It's about visual integrity and historical accuracy. But let's move to the next one, because this is the one that really made me scratch my head initially.
The envelopes.
Yes, the envelopes.
Yeah.
The text explicitly points out checking the style and dimensions of a specific type of envelope.
This is perhaps the most crucial example in the entire introduction because it perfectly encapsulates the collision between digital freedom and physical reality.
I mean, it's an envelope. You put paper in it, you seal it, you mail it. How complicated can it really be?
Incredibly complicated and financially devastating if you get it wrong. Let's construct a hypothetical scenario based entirely on the constraints of this text.
All right, paint me a picture.
Imagine you are a designer at an agency, and you've been hired to design the annual report for a major philanthropic organization.
Big budget, high stakes.
Huge stakes. They want something breathtaking. They want to send it to their top 10,000 donors. So, sitting in your digital software where you have infinite canvas space, you decide to make the annual report a perfect square.
Oh, nice.
9 inches by 9 inches. It looks phenomenally modern. The negative space is beautiful. The client signs off on it immediately.
Sounds like a huge win.
You send the files to the commercial printer. They print 10,000 copies of this beautiful, thick, square report.
It's a massive success.
Oop.
Until they try to mail it, right?
Exactly. The reports are sitting on pallets at the fulfillment center, and the fulfillment manager calls the designer and asks, "Hey, what envelope are we putting these in?" The designer, who never consulted a reference manual, assumes there's just a standard 9.5-inch square envelope readily available somewhere.
And let me guess, there isn't.
There isn't. Not as a standard, mass-produced stock item in that specific paperweight anyway.
Oh, this is a slow-motion car crash.
It gets worse. Because they want it mailed, they have to custom order the manufacture of 10,000 square envelopes.
That's going to cost a fortune.
It adds 3 weeks to the timeline and thousands of dollars to the budget. But okay, the envelopes finally arrive. The fulfillment center stuffs them. They put them on a truck to the bulk mail postal facility.
And then what?
And then the Postal Service rejects the entire pallet.
Wait, really? Why would they reject it? It has postage on it, doesn't it?
Yes, but it's because of the physics of postal sorting machines. The global postal infrastructure relies on optical character recognition OCR cameras and high-speed mechanical belts that process tens of thousands of letters an hour.
Okay, I've seen videos of those machines. They're insane.
They move incredibly fast. But these machines are engineered to handle rectangles with very specific aspect ratios. A perfect square does not have a distinct orientation.
I see.
The machine literally doesn't know which side is the top and which is the side. Therefore, it cannot be run through the automated high-speed sorter.
So what happened? Do they just throw the whole pallet away?
No, they don't throw it away, but it triggers what's called a non-machinable surcharge.
A non-machinable search.
Exactly. Every single one of those 10,000 envelopes now has to be hand-sorted by a human postal worker. And the Postal Service legally mandates an extra fee for this.
How much is the fee?
Let's say it's an extra 40 cents per piece.
Oh my goodness. So on top of the custom manufacturing cost, the designer's decision just added an unexpected $4,000 to the postage bill.
And delayed the delivery to those top donors by another week. The entire project is compromised. The client is furious. And why did all of this happen?
Because they didn't check the specs.
Right. Not because the designer lacked a beautiful creative vision. It happened because the designer didn't take 30 seconds to open a reference manual, flip to the envelope section, and confirm the standard dimensions and aspect ratios required for automated mail processing before they set the dimensions of their digital canvas.
That is absolutely shelling. It's like designing a beautiful sports car, but forgetting to measure the width of the highway lanes.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it. The envelope isn't just a container, it is the ultimate physical constraint of the distribution network.
Wow. Okay, that completely validates the envelope example.
Yeah.
But let's look at the final specific example the text gives, because it seems to drift into an entirely different territory.
Okay, what is it?
It says, understanding when it is appropriate to abbreviate a state or country name in the acceptable format. We've talked about ink, we've talked about postal sorting machines, but this is grammar. This is copywriting. Why is a graphic design manual dictating state abbreviations?
Because in the context of graphic design, text is not just language. Text is a visual element that occupies physical space, carries visual weight, and creates patterns.
Right, typography again.
But more importantly, the text is emphasizing the concept of acceptable format because graphic designers are ultimately responsible for formatting complex data for public and often machine consumption.
Can you give me a concrete example of how an abbreviation derails a design?
Let's stick with the postal logistics for a moment, actually, as it connects perfectly. When you are designing a self-mailer like a postcard or a folded brochure that doesn't use an envelope, there is a highly regulated zone on the paper called the OCR read area.
Right, I've seen that on guidelines before.
It's usually the bottom 5/8 of an inch. The postal cameras are programmed to scan that exact area, read the address, and spray a routing barcode onto the paper.
Okay, the little pink or black lines you see on the bottom of junk mail. I always wondered what those were.
Exactly. Those cameras are running at incredibly high speeds. They are programmed to recognize standardized data patterns. So, if you decide, for aesthetic reasons, to spell out California in a beautiful, sweeping script font.
Because it looks classy.
Right, or if you use an outdated abbreviation like CALIF period instead of the standardized two-letter CA, the camera might just fail to recognize it.
And if the camera fails?
It gets kicked out of the automated stream, it requires manual intervention, delivery is delayed, or the piece is returned to sender entirely.
Just because of an abbreviation?
Just because of an abbreviation, but it goes beyond just mailing, too. Think about data visualization and corporate formatting.
Like designing an annual report or a complex infographic.
Yes. Imagine you are typesetting a massive table of global sales figures for a multinational corporation. The table lists 50 different countries.
That's a lot of data.
If you are inconsistent, like if you use USA on line 1, United States on line 12, and just US on line 30, you're introducing visual noise.
Oh, I see. The columns won't align cleanly.
Exactly. The columns get jagged, the visual rhythm is broken. To a layman, it just looks messy. But to a stakeholder reading that report, it looks profoundly unprofessional.
It damages the credibility of the data.
It absolutely does. A designer's job is to impose order on chaos. By knowing the universally accepted formatting standards for geographic abbreviations, the designer ensures that the data is not only machine-readable, but visually harmonious and credible.
And if you don't know the standard, what do? You stop designing, you open a browser, you search ISO standard country abbreviations, you read through a Wikipedia table.
You try to figure out if you need the Alpha 2 or Alpha 3 code.
And the flow state is broken again. It all comes back to the cognitive tax. By highlighting fonts, envelopes, and abbreviations, the text is essentially mapping out the landmines that blow up a designer's day.
That's exactly what it's doing.
If you don't know the visual constraints, the physical constraints, and the data constraints, you just cannot execute your job.
Which brings us to the ultimate thesis of the text. Having identified the disease and the specific symptoms, it transitions to the overarching philosophy of how a professional should actually approach their workspace and their knowledge base.
And this is where the text gets incredibly punchy. So what does this all mean? It drops what I think is the most liberating sentence for any young creative professional.
It's a great line.
It states, "The graphic design reference and specification book was created to answer the questions that designers ask most often and to deliver this information in a concise, understandable, and easy-to-access way."
And then it hits you with that mantra.
Yes, no frills, no excess, just bottom-line information to help you produce your projects.
No frills, no excess. It is a radical rejection of that massive agency library we discussed earlier.
Yes, it really is. Because when you are a beginner, the sheer volume of things you don't know is terrifying.
Oh, it's paralyzing.
You look at a senior art director and you think, I have to memorize everything. I have to memorize every paperweight, every postal regulation, every color profile. But this text is telling you, no, you don't. You just need the bottom line.
It is shifting the entire metric of value. The industry does not pay you to be an encyclopedia.
No, they don't.
The industry pays you to produce your projects, as the text specifically states. The production, the finalized, error-free, physical execution of the idea is the only thing that actually matters.
It's like we said about the medical x-ray at the beginning. You just want the stark white line. You want the raw data.
Just show me the break.
Right. If I need the margin width for a standard number 10 envelope, I don't want a 3-page essay on the history of the number 10 envelope. I just want the numbers so I can set my guides and keep working.
And that bottom line philosophy is actually a form of cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading, I like that term.
The human brain can only hold so many variables in working memory at once. If you are trying to hold the emotional resonance of a photograph, the kerning of a headline, and the fractional conversion of a bleed margin in your head all simultaneously, you will drop one of them.
You're going to make a mistake.
Exactly. By offloading the rigid, non-negotiable facts, the bottom line information, into a trusted, centralized manual, you free up massive amounts of cognitive bandwidth.
So you can focus on the creative stuff.
Yes, you can dedicate 100% of your brain's processing power to the creative, generative problem, trusting that the administrative answers are sitting silently on your desk, ready the exact second you need them.
But wait, I have to ask. Doesn't that make the designer somewhat superficial?
How so?
Well, if we only ever consume the bottom line data, just the numbers, just the exact specs, are we risking losing the deep, fundamental understanding of why things work?
That's a fair point.
Like, if I never learn why paper grain matters, and I just blindly follow a template from a book, don't I eventually hit a wall where a complex custom project just breaks my entire process?
That is an excellent pushback, and honestly, it is a trap that many hack-based professionals fall into. They learn the shortcut without ever understanding the road.
Right, they just want the quick fix.
But the source text anticipates this exact vulnerability, and it offers a brilliant structural safety net.
Oh, you're talking about the final detail it mentions.
Yes, exactly. After vehemently championing no frills, no excess, the text casually notes, there's even a bibliography at the end of the book to help if additional information is needed.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because usually a bibliography is just the end credits of a book.
Right.
You know, it's the boring part you skip.
Nobody reads the bibliography.
Exactly. So why is the text explicitly pointing it out right there in the introduction?
Because it reveals a deeply sophisticated, two-tiered system of knowledge management. The author understands that 95% of a designer's day is about velocity.
Speed is everything.
You are moving fast, making thousands of micro-decisions. For that 95%, you need the raw, unfiltered data. You need the bottom line. The text serves as that high-speed primary layer.
Right. Give me the envelope dimensions and let me get back to work.
But then there's that remaining 5%.
The complex stuff.
The moment where you aren't just applying a standard, but you are being asked to invent something entirely new. The client wants a radically complex packaging structure, or they want to explore a historically revived printing technique like letterpress or foil stamping.
Suddenly the bottom line numbers aren't enough anymore.
Exactly. You need the deep theory, you need the physics, you need the history.
And if you don't have a plan for that 5%,
Yeah.
you end up right back in the Google wilderness, wasting time again.
Exactly. And that is where the bibliography deploys. It basically says, look, we intentionally kept the main pages of this book clean and fast so we didn't slow down your daily workflow. But when you hit a complex wall and you need the deep theory, do not go to a search engine. Do not guess.
Go to our bibliography.
Yes. It provides a curated, verified pathway to the exact right books in that massive agency library. It points you to the definitive, authoritative texts on typography or paper science or postal regulations.
That is the ultimate workflow optimization. It solves the speed problem without sacrificing the depth.
It really does.
It says, we will give you the answer instantly, but if you need to know why the answer is what it is, here is exactly where to look. It removes the friction from both the daily execution and the long-term research.
If we synthesize everything we've unpacked from this introduction today, it truly is a blueprint for professional maturity.
How so?
Well, when you look at an amateur, their process is largely defined by hope and reaction.
Hope and reaction. I like that.
They design something that looks good on their screen, they hope the font translates correctly, they hope the physical dimensions make sense, and then they react with panic when the printer kicks the file back with errors.
They are constantly putting out fires that they accidentally started themselves.
Exactly. But a professional's process is defined by standardization and certainty. They remove hope from the equation entirely.
Because hope isn't a strategy.
Right. They don't guess the postal abbreviation, they consult the standard, they don't estimate the color mix, they verify the swatch. By mastering the mundane, mechanical constraints of their medium, they paradoxically achieve total creative freedom.
Because when you know exactly where the walls are, you can run as fast as you want within that room without fear of crashing.
Perfectly said.
You reclaim those lost hours of administrative forensics.
Yeah.
You take all that mental energy you were wasting on verifying margins and triangulating forum posts, and you pour it directly back into the creative act.
It's an incredible shift in perspective. Just from analyzing a few paragraphs of an introduction, we've essentially mapped out the psychological and logistical hurdles of an entire industry.
It really is a profound text. It proves that mastering your tools isn't just about learning software, it's about learning the physical and industrial reality that your software is attempting to manipulate. And that is exactly why we wanted to do this deep dive today. If you are listening to this, whether you are trying to build a freelance business from your kitchen table or you are sitting in a cubicle at a massive global firm, You cannot let technical friction dictate your day.
You don't have to live like that.
You really don't. You do not have to carry all this anxiety in your head. You don't have to rely on Google. You need to build your own safety net.
Or simply utilize the one that has already been engineered for you.
Absolutely. So as a final critical reminder to you, our listener, you really need to check out the source material that drove this entire conversation today.
You won't regret it.
The book is called The Graphic Design Reference Plus Specification Book. You can find the Amazon book link at https://amzn.24/UFI. Please scan the QR code of the book link in the description below to buy it.
Get a physical copy.
Yes, put it on your desk. Make it your primary line of defense against that workflow friction. And of course, please follow for more technical design breakdowns and career-building content. We are going to keep peeling back the layers on these fundamental structural realities of creative work.
As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder as you look at your own workspace.
What's that?
Well, we started this deep dive talking about the architect holding the vision of the whole house in their mind, and the chef losing their creative rhythm because they had to search for a single ingredient.
Right.
Consider the sheer volume of mental bandwidth you dedicate right now to simply verifying the rules of your industry. If a no-frills bottom-line manual completely removes that friction, if you never had to pause your creative flow to search for a technical detail again, what new creative boundaries could you push with all that reclaimed time and untouched mental energy?